The movie begins in the 10th year after the collapse of human civilization. The survivors have been forced into a desperate struggle where they literally eat one another just to stay alive. A young man named Jake spots a group of strangers approaching, so he hides inside a remote cabin deep in the woods, trembling with fear. What he doesn't realize is that these are the very people he provoked the day before. The scene then shifts to an earlier moment, showing Jake and his father out hunting. His father manages to wound a massive wild boar, but when they follow the blood trail, they discover the animal has jumped into a swamp. Left with no other choice, they widen their search for supplies such as food, water, and anything else that might help them survive. After walking for quite some time, they come across two abandoned vehicles blocking the road. Tree branches have grown over them, and both the doors and luggage are already open, suggesting someone searched them long ago. Even so, they decide to look inside. While searching, Jake accidentally sets off the car alarm. His father shoots him a disappointed look, leaving Jake embarrassed and silent. As his father searches for a pack of cigarettes lying in one corner of the car, Jake gets lucky and finds a pack of expired cookies. He quickly hides it, but moments later he accidentally presses the horn. The loud blast shatters the silence of the forest and attracts a pack of wild dogs. His father immediately pushes Jake into the back seat, slams the trunk shut, and hides in the driver's seat. Fortunately, the massive wild dogs fail to find them, and they barely escape with their lives. Jake, who has always been spoiled by his father's care and protection, still thinks like a child. While his father is distracted, he secretly eats almost the entire pack of cookies. Before they leave, he finishes the last piece and carelessly throws the empty wrapper aside. In a place that looked untouched for years, a fresh cookie wrapper was bound to bring trouble. The following day, while Jake is in the bathroom, he suddenly hears noise behind him. He turns around and sees a large group of strangers heading straight toward him. He hurriedly pulls up his pants, runs into the cabin, and hides under whatever he can find, completely unaware that they tracked him down because of his own careless actions. Peeking through a crack in the door, he watches the group get closer until fear overwhelms him and he collapses to the floor. The noise wakes his father, who immediately notices the terror on Jake's face and realizes danger is near. When he sees the large group approaching the cabin, he knows there's no avoiding a fight. He quickly gathers their belongings, places their precious medicine inside a backpack, and hands it to Jake, who is still in shock. As Jake begins to regain his composure, his father kicks through a wooden board, and the two escape through the back door. However, Jake's wife is badly injured and unable to walk very far. Faced with an impossible choice, his father hides both Jake and his wife inside a sewage pit before turning to face the killers alone. Despite his bravery, he manages to wound only a few of them before they overpower him, knock him to the ground with a club, and one of the attackers seizes the opportunity to kill him. Jake and his wife watch his father's murder with horror, their hearts completely shattered. Yet to stay alive, they have no choice but to suppress their grief and remain silent. The gang then loots the cabin, taking everything of value. One of the thieves notices the backpack Jake had discarded. When he opens it, he discovers the priceless medicine inside and is overjoyed. In this post-apocalyptic world, most survivors suffer from a deadly bacterial infection, and that medicine is the only thing keeping them alive. Jake's wife desperately needs that medicine to survive, but now every last pill has been stolen. Jake watches helplessly as the thieves tie up his father's body and carry it away. As they pass the sewage pit, their leader notices something unusual and tries to lift the cover. Jake braces it with all his strength from underneath, preventing it from opening. Curious, the leader leans in closer but immediately steps back because of the unbearable stench, giving Jake and his wife a small chance to breathe again. Once the thieves finally leave, Jake climbs out of the pit and notices the discarded cookie wrapper lying on the ground. In that heartbreaking moment, he realizes his own greed caused the entire tragedy. Inside the cabin, everything has been ransacked, and every supply they had collected is gone. Even worse, his wife's wound has become severely infected. She lies unconscious on the bed, and there's no medicine left to save her. Feeling completely helpless, Jake briefly considers ending her suffering with a pillow. But after losing his father, he can't bear the thought of losing the woman he loves as well. Determined, he decides he must recover the stolen medicine no matter what. He leaves the cabin, giving his wife the last of their water and barricading the door with a wooden plank to protect her. He then follows the trail of blood dripping from his father's body. As he travels through the wilderness, the ground gradually becomes covered in frost. Wearing nothing but a t-shirt, he keeps walking until exhaustion overwhelms him. His limbs go numb, and he collapses to the ground. Just before losing consciousness, he spots a young boy passing nearby. Seizing his last chance, Jake follows him. When the boy reaches his home and sees Jake, he rushes inside and locks the iron gate behind him. But the gate isn't enough to stop Jake. He repeatedly kicks it until it finally breaks open. Terrified, the boy hides behind his grandfather. Jake doesn't harm either of them. Instead, he simply takes the old man's clothes to keep himself warm. After changing into the warmer clothes, Jake continues searching for the thieves' hideout. Soon he discovers more bloodstains scattered across the ground, along with pieces of human bones. He instantly realizes the thieves have eaten his father. Overcome with grief and disgust, he vomits before gathering what remains of his father's bones and giving them a proper burial. Pulling himself together once more, Jake remembers that his wife's life is hanging by a thread. He knows he must find the thieves as quickly as possible and recover the medicine to save her. But with the blood trail now gone, the only clue he had has disappeared. Suddenly, Jake comes up with an idea. He quickly climbs a nearby tree to get a better view of the area. From the top, he spots a column of smoke rising in the distance. But before he can do anything, he loses his balance and crashes hard to the ground. Even worse, the noise from his fall attracts a pack of wild dogs. Jake immediately prepares to run, but his leg, injured in the fall, slows him down. As he lands beside an old, extinguished campfire, he remembers that wild animals are afraid of fire. He decides to relight it to scare the beasts away. As the sun begins to set, Jake successfully gets the fire burning again and keeps feeding it with more wood until the flames grow larger. Then he grabs a burning stick, waves it around, and manages to frighten the wild dogs, forcing them to retreat. When Jake wakes up at dawn, the fire has gone out once again. After barely surviving the night, he continues his journey. Along the way, he notices a closed blue tent. He opens it and searches for anything useful. He tosses aside the lightweight clothes inside and takes 2 extra boxes of matches, a rusty knife, and a whistle that seems completely useless. As soon as Jake steps out of the tent, he runs into the little boy again. The boy panics, turns around, and runs away. Jake continues following the small river that winds through the forest when he notices a patch of blood floating on the surface of the water. He immediately hides and carefully watches the area. Soon, he spots the only woman in the thieves' gang cleaning her knife beside the river. Instead of acting recklessly, Jake quietly picks up a rock and follows her all the way back to the gang's camp. Once he realizes she's the only one left there, he decides to sneak in and steal what he can. Suddenly, he notices a trap that his father had once set up. Carefully avoiding the string attached to a bell, he spots the familiar backpack inside the camp. Jake quickly searches the backpack, but the medicine isn't inside. He continues searching the rest of the camp. Meanwhile, the woman senses that something isn't right and begins looking around, preparing to attack. Fortunately, Jake catches her reflection in a broken mirror just in time. He dodges her attack and fights back, but she's far stronger than he expected, and he can't overpower her. Finally, he grabs the rock he picked up earlier and delivers a fatal blow, killing her. Afterward, Jake heads to a nearby camper trailer and searches it for the medicine. But when the thieves begin returning, he quickly wipes away the bloodstains, covers every trace of the fight, drags the woman's body to a hidden spot, and hides himself as well. When the gang returns to camp, they've also captured the innocent little boy. To Jake's surprise, the gang leader is extremely observant. He immediately notices that the broken mirror has been moved. Calmly, he unlocks a secure cabinet, takes out the medicine, distributes it among the infected members of his group, and then locks it away again. The leader then heads toward the riverbank to look for the missing woman, but there's no sign of her. A short time later, one of his men finds a weapon lying nearby, prompting the leader to gather the entire group and begins searching the area. Meanwhile, hidden among the trees, Jake quickly covers the woman's body with leaves before quietly crawling back into the camp. The only person left behind is a man infected with the bacterial disease. Too weak to move, he remains inside the camper to rest while everyone else follows the leader. Jake seizes the opportunity and tries to rescue the little boy. But the frightened child doesn't trust him and immediately screams for help. Annoyed by the noise, the infected man gets up and enters the camper to investigate, only to discover that the boy has already escaped after Jake freed him. The infected man immediately chases after the child, giving Jake the perfect chance to approach the locked medicine case. Just as Jake is about to open it, the gang leader suddenly returns to the camp. Jake has no choice but to dive beneath the camper and hide. From there, he watches the gang discover the woman's body. Despite everything, some of them still have a shred of humanity left. Instead of eating her body, they choose to give her a proper funeral by cremating her, hoping to prevent anyone from discovering the location of their camp. With no safe way to escape, Jake is forced to remain hidden beneath the camper for the entire night. The next morning, while the gang leader is still asleep, Jake quietly sneaks into the camper. Using his small knife, he cuts the rope and takes the key hanging around the leader's neck. He successfully unlocks the medicine case, quickly stuffs the pills into his pocket, and then locks the camper door from the outside. Just as he's about to leave, he accidentally bumps into the string attached to the alarm bell. The ringing instantly wakes the leader, who rushes to catch the intruder, only to realize the door has been locked from the outside. Furious, he repeatedly slams against it until he finally smashes it open and escapes. Jake sprints through the forest as fast as he can, with the gang leader and his men chasing close behind. The distance between them shrinks rapidly. At the same time, Jake's wife wakes up to the sound of wild dogs. When she opens her eyes, she sees the cabin completely surrounded, and one of the dogs has already shoved its head through a gap in the front door. Jake is in serious danger, but because he knows the area so well, he uses the terrain to his advantage and manages to outmaneuver the gang. As he runs through the woods, he eventually reaches an abandoned house. Inside, he notices countless wild dog tracks and quickly realizes what happened. Without the protection of the iron gate, the little boy's grandfather had fallen victim to the wild dogs. The horrifying sight deeply shakes Jake, and he leaves the house confused and overwhelmed with despair. With no strength left to keep fighting, Jake resigns himself to what seems like certain death when a group of strangers suddenly attacks him. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself tied up on the ground while the gang sharpens their knives, builds a fire, and prepares to cook him alive. But Jake isn't ready to die just yet. Suddenly, he notices the whistle he had found earlier lying beside him. The gang isn't paying any attention to it. Jake blows the whistle as hard as he can, sending a loud, piercing sound echoing through the forest. Within moments, the hungry wild dogs come charging in. The leader immediately realizes the danger and kicks Jake in an attempt to stop him, but it's already too late. The dogs' howls fill the air as they attack the gang. Jake takes advantage of the chaos, pulls out the small knife he had hidden, cuts himself free, and hides behind a nearby tree to avoid the dogs. He quickly puts on the clothes of one of the dead gang members and prepares to fight back. After escaping the wild dogs, the surviving gang members immediately begin searching for Jake to get revenge. The first man to reach the area believes Jake has disappeared, so he starts searching nearby. He spots what looks like the edge of a jacket sticking out from behind a tree, pulls out his knife, and lunges forward, only to discover he's stabbed nothing more than a discarded piece of clothing. At that exact moment, Jake leaps down from the tree, lands on the man's back, and kills him. Jake quickly changes clothes with the dead man and drags the body into view to lure another gang member. At first, the others mistake Jake for one of their own, but by the time they realize their mistake, it's already too late. Jake spins around and drives his knife straight into the second man's chest. After killing him, Jake takes the man's bow and arrows, ironically, the very same bow his own father had crafted. Determined to avenge his father, Jake fires an arrow that strikes the gang leader in the thigh. However, the leader displays an unbelievable tolerance for pain, snapping the arrow off and pulling it from his leg. Jake tries to fire another shot, but the bowstring suddenly snaps, leaving him defenseless just as the wild dogs begin closing in once again. With no other choice, both Jake and the gang leader are forced to hide. After running what feels like miles, Jake stumbles near another house. He cautiously approaches it, and is relieved to discover it's abandoned. Near the entrance lies a human skeleton with a handgun beside it. Jake carefully searches the house and discovers a hidden stash of supplies, including another pistol. Now armed with 2 handguns, Jake finally feels confident and ready for anything. But just as he's about to grab some food, he hears someone entering the house. He turns around and sees the gang leader, who has tracked him all the way there. Jake seizes the opportunity, points one of the pistols at him, and pulls the trigger, only to realize the gun is completely unloaded. The leader immediately gains the upper hand and charges at him. A brutal fight breaks out, and it's clear that Jake is no match for him. The leader quickly pins him to the ground and begins beating him mercilessly. Thinking fast, Jake slams his foot down on the leader's wounded thigh. The leader screams in agony, loosening his grip just enough for Jake to break free. Struggling to his feet, Jake grabs the second handgun from the table and fires without hesitation. This time, the gang leader isn't so lucky. At last, Jake escapes the nightmare. Without wasting a second, he races back toward his cabin. As he passes the little boy's house, he leaves behind 3 cans of food as compensation for the boy and his grandfather before continuing on to the cabin deep in the woods. When Jake finally arrives, he discovers that the barricade protecting the cabin has been destroyed, and his wife is nowhere to be found. The sight completely breaks him. He collapses to the ground, consumed by grief and hopelessness. Then, in that very moment, someone quietly approaches from behind and gently places a hand on his shoulder. Hope returns to Jake's heart as he realizes he may finally have a chance to rebuild his life. And that's the end of the movie. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more movie summaries.